pause or if no one's sending messages, but
Yeah,
I'm taking this as a... Okay, cool. Yeah. All right, so... All right, cool. Yeah, let's go ahead and get started then. So general meetings, this is where we're going to be doing kind of broad things that can apply to everyone. We'll be going over like submitting ISEF, presentations, practice, debating research questions. Later on, when we get to more specific research meetings, we'll have those later on in, I believe, October, November. That's when we'll divide y'all up to go into specific fields of interest. But until then, we'll be having general meetings. Again, it's just general information that everyone can know about the research process. So, oh, photo's not loading. Okay, I'm not sure why, but I'm Yujin Cho. I'm the president of the general meetings team, and we're just going. It's just going to be me and Zoe for this. And I guess Zoe, if you want to introduce yourself.
I'm a senior, and I'm the vice president.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe the photo's loaded. There we go.
Oh.
Okay. Same photo. Yeah. Cool. Okay. All right. So we're gonna go over accessing the Canvas page first. So, oh, that's weird. It has animations. Okay. We'll just look through it like this. But did anyone have any issues with accessing the Canvas page? Is everyone here able to log in and see the course? Let me pull it up here just to show you what it's supposed to look like. Yeah, you should see introductions in September. Okay, cool. So we'll handle this right now. If you haven't gotten in yet, send the email in chat, right? Send your email in chat, the email you want to use, recommended personal email, because I've been having some issues with school emails. So just send those in and we can get you added right now. But yeah, in the meantime, so most of our resources, curriculum, and assignments, we're going to handle all in the Canvas classroom. So any information about sign-up sheets for ISEF, our officer forms, everything will just be aggregated in this one place. So it's a really good. It would be really good if y'all did participate in the Canvas course, and it's also where will be able to go through discussions to talk about your ideas to one another. So as I mentioned, some of the benefits are facilitating discussion among each of y'all. So discussion rooms, we'll have resources, easy ways to submit, and we'll be able to track your involvement if you're ever looking to be in an officer position in the future. This is how we're going to make sure you've actually been participating in this club. You actually have a vested interest. And then again, we're going to also host our lecture recordings and everything here too. Yeah. Maybe you can send it to me as a DM too, but. Cool. All right. And is there anyone else? Otherwise, you might have to send an email or DM. Okay, cool. Yep. Everyone, please check their emails to see if they got a invite link. And then once you do, head over to modules, see if you can see all the pages. You should be able to see the first lecture recording. And so lectures recording's going fine right now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, okay, we'll move on for now. Again, if there's any issues, just let me know in chat, but... Okay, cool. So firstly, within the course, we're going to have like a resources page. This is where we're going to keep any information about like websites, links you might need, the official website for our local and national competition. So yeah, if you also have any club forms that need to be submitted, this is where we're going to keep everything. Later on, as we move throughout the course, we get into like October, November, we'll also have like the past posts we've made all aggregated within resources. So it'll be like a quick link where you can check out past pages. Yep. Okay, and then, well, this is also our second module. So here we're going to have 2 assignments y'all need to complete. So again, if you don't see the beginning of the year's meeting and slides, send me a message or put it in chat so we can get that sorted out right now. But before the end of the year, before September 15th, we need to have your registration confirmation completed and your club membership form in order for you to access the course. So make sure you have these completed in 4 days before these are due as well. Okay, and quick check, is everyone able to access the course? Attendance raise? Oh, we will go over that, actually. Yeah, I might have to pull it up, but I'll go over that in the meeting. Okay, and Zoe, you want to continue on with the rest of it? So,
like for this module, did you already say registration confirmation or no?
registration.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, okay, sorry, it's a copy. Let me go to modules. Okay, actually, I'll just explain this part. So, sorry, September, this is where we're going to have our meeting recordings for this year, alongside the like forms, assignments to complete, and we'll have a discussion open as well. Any guest speakers we'll have later on within the months. This is where all the lecture recordings are going to go as well. Okay, sorry, Nauza, if you want to explain the rest. Okay, cool.
Okay, so first we're gonna go over like what is research. So like, if you guys are a bit confused about like what this club is for or like what you're going to be doing in this club or why you should do it, so basically it's like what is it? It's like you're contributing to a field. You're giving like a special angle or like new findings in a scientific field, and yeah. And then for ISEF, that's the competition that we're mainly going to be preparing you for, and we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk about forming a research question and like what makes it good or bad. And then we'll go over the assignments after this meeting and like future events.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Take it like this. Okay. All right. So, firstly, what is research, right? We covered this a little bit last in our first meeting, and we're going to go into this in a little bit more depth with an analogy. So, let's start with this example, right? This hypothetical situation, right? You want to share a prediction about how hard the next physics test is going to be. So, in the chat, give your best like method for how you might tell your friend to how hard the physics test is going to be. How would you explain it? What would you tell them, etc. So in the meantime, though, if you want to give like a response, what do you
I
think? That just tell your friend.
I would let's see. I mean, I would think about how hard the past tests were, and like, or maybe I would ask people who have taken physics or
Yeah,
gather
right.
data
So
on.
I mean, you knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm just going to cut right to the chase. There'll be more questions later on, but I do want to move on. So it's a pretty simple response, honestly. You would just go to your friend, right? You would tell them. You would think of, like Zoe said, right,
Oh yeah,
past
prediction.
physics classes, yeah, and try and predict how it goes off of that, right? But there's a few considerations, right? What if we want to expand this? Now it's not just you talking to your friend. What if it's like a group, and you want to, and the entire group wants to tell you, hey, the physics test was this hard, the physics test was that hard, right? There's a couple new variables that you have to consider. Firstly, how do I keep track of everyone's opinions, right? You're going to be hearing a lot of them at once. You need a way to organize all of that. So one way you could do it is by creating a Google spreadsheet, right? You can contain everyone's predictions. And this is kind of in the real world analogous to journals, which is where where papers are actually being compiled, where they're being submitted and organized. So nextly, how do I know who to believe, right? That's also another question we have to consider. Well, one thing we can do is make them explain their reasoning, like Zoe said, right? We can create a system and then disregard bad ideas by making them write a summary, which helps you clear through the question faster. So again, we'll go through the anatomy of a paper more later on, but this should give you like a general understanding of how and why the research field works in this way. But let's continue on, right? So, well, we want everyone to follow the same standard. Let's say it's not just a group, right? It's hundreds of people. It's gotten even bigger. So now we have to create standards. So it would be, like I mentioned earlier, the abstract. We need a council to evaluate which submissions get approved, which one don't. So if someone writes like a joke response saying it's going to be really easy, right? Because my sixth sense tells me to, you don't want to include that in the same category as someone who did a very detailed analysis. So you can create a committee, which is the review committee, in order to approve or deny different submissions. So now we have like a general structure, right? And this is how the actual field of research really works, which is where you create a paper, send it through a peer review board, which accepts or denies your paper. And then finally, if it does get accepted, this is when it gets submitted to the journal and uploaded alongside its next release. Is everyone clear so far? Oh, actually, we'll have questions at the end. So if you have any, save them for then. Cool. Okay. Right. And then, so this assumes there's only a physics teacher inside of Tompkins, but there's more teachers, right? So let's say we want to make a test for, or evaluate the difficulty for biology, for example. We would need a separate group, a separate committee, and a separate journal for biology. We'd need to do the same thing for a different group, right? Let's say we want to figure out chemistry. We'd need a group for chemistry. We need an approval committee for chemistry, etc., right? On and on for every single subject. This is what's going to be the different types of journals. As I mentioned earlier, journals are the specific organization you publish to, and the institutional review board, and then you're going to have multiple journals. An institutional review board, this is just going to be like what makes sure that what research you're conducting is actually going to be safe and it's going to be ethical. So we don't want like someone making a bad prediction, maybe like sneaking into the teacher's classrooms to steal the test. We don't want that kind of stuff. So the institutional review board is going to cover that base. Okay, cool. So, right. So how does this connect to ISEF, right? How's this related? Well, in ISEF, you're doing a similar thing. There's different types of papers, but ISEF specifically, you're publishing your own experimental research to a panel of judges. So more into depth about like what type of papers there are. There's going to be papers that are literature reviews. These are just going to be summaries of an existing field, right? There's also going to be experimental research, which is going to be the category in which you're doing ISEF in. There's also a lot of research that's kind of in the middle ground. Generally, for an experimental group, the main qualification needs to be that it has a control and you're testing and modifying a single variable. Okay, cool. So what is ISEF, right? ISEF is the largest pre-collegiate science fair program in the world. So what you're doing in this competition is you're building a project of your interest and you're presenting your research in a format similar to real-world research. So here's an example of what a research poster actually looks like. So what actually happens in these competitions is you build a project, you make a poster board out of it, and judges will just walk past your poster and then ask you questions about it. And this happens in two phases, where the first is just they're getting asked about your research content itself, and then later it's going to be if you want any sponsorships or approvals. And okay, actually, yeah. So for ISF, there's going to be a couple of grand awards as well. These are going to be like top level awards, and there's like $9 million in prizes. It's a very prestigious competition. If you're first, you get $6,000 in cash. Second, $2,400. Third, $1,200, and the fourth is $600. And there's also special awards within ISF Grand Awards, which are going to be the George D. Yakupoulos Innovator Award, which is the most famous. It used to be like 75,000, I believe, but now it's like 100,000, which is crazy. And then so on and so forth. If you want more information about this, you can look on the resources page. Cool. So yeah, all right. There's 22 categories at ISEF, and then each of these are going to cover an individual field of research, and we'll actually go through each of these in more detail. But yeah, so you want to take turns just explaining each of these fields?
Sure. Let me go to it. Okay. Okay, animal science is just stuff about animals, I guess. You can study like their development, their genetics, etc.
Yeah, right. And along that same line, it's going to be like, as Zoe said, any projects related specifically to animals. And this could be anything ranging from like chemistry, like cell behavior, all these different types of subtopics. Again, a lot of these fields kind of overlap, so I'll explain this more, but I would say when you're picking out the category, I want you to first think of an idea and then think of which category it would best fit into based on what your project uses the most. But yeah, that's animal sciences. We also have behavioral and social sciences, like cognition. This is going to be stuff like behavioral neuroscience, development, cognitive psychology, sociology, and anthropology, right? Okay, and then we also have biochemistry, which is what me, Sachit, and yeah, me and Sachit are currently are competing in. And what we do in biochemistry is it's just the study of processes of living organisms, like substances, and there's different categories such as analytical biochemistry, general biochemistry, medicine, and structure. So yeah, if you have any questions, you can ask me or ask Sachit about your project. All right, biomedical, this is going to be stuff like diagnosis, treatment, prevention, and epidemiology. So this was actually my last year's topic as well. This is going to be when you're like creating projects. You can do something like pathology, for example. It's basically the management and diagnosis of different conditions. This is biomedical. I'll skip over a lot of the medical ones. They're along the same vein, but you should have a general understanding of the different fields that are available. These are cellular and molecular biology. There's chemistry. This is going to be like pure chemistry. Computation and bioscience, neuroscience. Earth, environmental sciences, embedded systems, energy, sustainable materials and design. So, and then engineering specifically. So this would be statics and dynamics and environmental engineering, material sciences, pure mathematics, microbiology, physics, and plant sciences, I believe. Oh, okay, there's robotics as well, and system software. Cool. I believe this is a new category. I've not seen this one before, but technology enhances arts. Translational medicine. Cool. Okay. Yeah. All right. So these are all like the different fields. As you can see, there's a lot of different categories you can choose from. Again, I want you to start thinking like from the research idea perspective, rather than focusing on the specific category first, because it's very likely that whatever idea you're doing, it's probably going to fit into one of these categories because they overlap a lot and they also encompass a lot of different fields. Just make sure, like be 100% sure that when you're picking an idea, that it's actually an experimental research project, not a literature review or something similar to literature review. So for example, if I say I'm aggregating a list of resources from the last 2 years to build a project, so let's say I'm building like a machine learning algorithm using data collected in the past 2 years from papers, that would probably not qualify as an ISF project. If you're using a database, that's different. But if you're using like the average data that's available from papers, that's not going to qualify. That'd be more in a literature review category. So there's a fine line between literature reviews and papers, experimental papers. Okay, cool. So if you've taken AP seminar, or AP Research, the research process is going to be pretty similar, right? You can use websites like JSTOR, EBSCO, Google Scholar. For ISEF specifically, I'm going to recommend more specific journals combined with Google Scholar because there's going to be more resources compared to like student-based journals, which are going to be very simple papers. And I'll go into Google Scholar so I can break it down for you. Here's a couple of key features that you should learn how to use. So let's say I want to search up, trend of global warming, right? And then if you look to this column, I can specify the date since the publication. I would generally focus on trying to find papers that have been published in the last 2 years. If you're doing something in like in a developing field, I would honestly pick like the last year. There's going to be a lot of research in that, and the field is going to be quickly changing as well. All right, so let's look through one of these papers. Maybe this one. Okay, cool. Oh, this one's paywall. I'll show you how you can get past that, but this one as well. Okay, cool. Yeah. All right, so here's a good example. Right, so concurrent heat extremes in relation to global warming, high atmospheric pressure, and low soil moisture in the northern hemisphere. Cool. So if I want to first understand what the paper is about, I can look in the abstract. This is just a summary of the introduction, the methodology, the results, and the discussion. So just a broad overview. I would recommend reading through the abstract when you start looking into papers to get a general idea of what the paper is about, rather than diving in, feeling like you have to read the entire paper. So let's say I'm doing a project. Let's see, heat extremes. Okay, let's say I'm doing a project adjacent to this, right? And I quickly read over the abstract. Summer heat extremes increasingly co-occur worldwide. Heat extremes show strong spatial concurrent strength, varying geographically. Low soil moisture enhances regional heat extremes. Okay, that's interesting, right? And then here's the question. Our study underscores the importance of identifying mechanisms of spatially concurrent heat extremes to improve prediction and mitigation of widespread heat waves and their adverse impact on socioeconomic sustainability and human well-being. So based on this, I have to think about, hey, whether this actually relates to my project. Let's say I'm doing something like kind of different, right? Rather than heat extremes, I'm trying to make a solution for global warming, maybe like something engineering. Well, this is not going to be really related to my project, right? Summer heat extremes, sure, if I'm looking into resolving those specifically, then that might be good to look at. But better off I'd be looking at engineering papers. So this would automatically be a cross out. So I wouldn't even need to like read through the rest. I can just immediately say, hey, this paper is probably not going to be it. I can stop right here. And if we go further, introduction. This is when you get like a broad overview of what the topic is going to be about. And generally, as you read more and more of these papers, you can kind of skim over or just skip altogether the introduction. They do get very similar the more and more you read papers within a specific field. And then here's the materials and methods. This is where you're going to get, and I believe this is different for every single field you're going into. So computer science, I believe, has materials and methods merged with discussion or validation and discussion. Medical, I believe it's different. It's not the same. Conclusions and discussions are held separately typically. So yeah, this is where you're going to get information on how the study was actually conducted. So you can see like formulas, how they actually carried out the study. And finally, results. This is when you're getting, obviously, the results of the study. In discussion, I believe there should be a discussion here. There we go. Yeah, this is when they're going to actually walk you through the results they found, how it connects back to the research topic they're looking into. Okay, cool. So that's the general anatomy of the paper. And I want to quickly walk you through how to use Sci-Hub. Okay. All right, going back to one of the locked pages, you can see that I can't access this. You can use this website to access papers. It just basically finds a website online. Oh, tries to find the paper online. Some don't work. But for more popular journals, usually there's papers available. So Science Direct. There should be one for this one. Oh, that's weird. Okay, maybe the server's down. They're going to a different one. Okay, all right, something's up, but yeah, generally what it's supposed to do is it just finds a PDF of the paper available online. So you can just easily access it if there's a paywall. Okay, cool. Yeah, and cool. All right, so different resources. Right now, most of y'all are going to be in the phase of like starting and choosing an idea. I would recommend, rather than diving into research papers, you should look into magazines, newspapers, maybe YouTube videos. I mean, if honestly you just want to like coast, you can like search up maybe YouTube Shorts in like an engineering field. Just scroll through it really quickly. You might find a topic that interests you, and bam, right? You can look more into that later on. And once you have that idea, that like initial like point of interest, you can look into literature reviews, journal articles, papers. Maybe there might be some magazines that might be more informative. I would generally stick to looking at literature reviews within a field. Contained within these literature reviews, the more and more you read them, there's going to be little bits where they tell you, there might be a gap in this field. There's not enough information in this field. There needs to be more research in this area. That's where you can come in and then try and resolve those deficiencies. Okay, cool. Yeah, and okay, cool. Yeah, and then once you actually start on your own research, this is when you can look at specific experiments. So before it's like getting a general overview of a field, understanding all like the math behind it, what the common practice is. Now, specifically to your situation, right? How am I going to do this calculation? Oh, I had this special issue with my project. That's unique. Is there any papers that have done something similar in the past? What have they done to fix it? That's when you look into more specific papers. And when you get to this point, when you're designing the methods, you're going to start annotating papers deeply because you will need to have like a very deep understanding of your topic in order to actually be able to conduct research on it. And along that line, I would keep like a journal. We might actually make it mandatory because science and engineering fair at ISEF actually, pretty sure they have it as a mandatory requirement, or they dropped that requirement recently. But yeah, I would still keep a journal where you just write down what you did every single day, and you can just show that to judges to like walk them through the process. It's a lot more easier. Cool. All right, so if you go back to Canvas, so if everyone can go to modules, there should be a file containing the first project proposal, or first progress check. Is there anyone who's having issues with this? Okay, cool. Yeah, let's see. We'll try adding you again. Okay, so it says the email was already sent out. Yep. Okay. All right, if you're not able to get in, I've sent all the emails out to the links. You might have to send me like your personal email or a different account. Because the invite is sent out, so just maybe check your spam and trash folder. Okay. Cool. All right. Continue sending out like responses if you're having issues. But yeah, I will start the video over
A good
research question. Okay, cool. Is everyone able to hear the audio actually?
research question is really like a light. A good research question is really like a lighthouse. It's essential to guide your research paper. It pinpoints exactly what you want to find out and gives your work a clear purpose and focus. Hi, I'm Jessica from Scribber, here to help you achieve your academic goals. Without further ado, here are 5 steps to develop a strong research question. Step 1. Choose a broad topic. Go with the topic that sparks your interest, since you'll be spending quite some time with it. For me, I'm thinking maybe something about social media. Step 2. Do some preliminary reading about the topic. Okay, so I've read a lot of newspaper writing about how social media negatively impacts high school students' academic performances, and they also happen to be one of the most active age groups on social media. Step 3. Narrow down to a specific need.
Okay, and yeah, notice how she's going from very broad to narrow. So along a similar line, you can honestly kind of skip the broad topic, broad section by going straight through like different articles that interest you in a field. But again, just go from like very wide to narrow.
This way, you can make sure the research is within a feasible scope instead of something too broad to achieve in a given time frame. Since academic performance is too broad, let me narrow it down to attention span. Step 4. Identify a research problem. So we have already established that adolescents are one of the most active age groups on social media platforms. But only a scarce amount of research has been done on the effect of social media has on the younger generation's attention span. So this will be my research problem. Step 5. Write your research question, turning your research problem into a question. And it sounds something like, what effect does daily use of Twitter have on the attention span of people in the age group of 16 to 20? Since this is a descriptive research, the research question is also descriptive. But there are also other kinds of research questions. It all depends on the type of research you'll do. For example, comparative research, descriptive research, or correlational research. Now we have a research question, but how do you know if it's good or not? Here's a checklist for you. A good research question should be focused. And focused it is, since it focuses on a single problem of Twitter's effect on the attention span of high school students. It should be researchable. That means the answer to your question can be found by collecting empirical data or through existing literature. In our case, we can go for a quantitative approach, like using eye tracking or mouse tracking to measure the attention span. It needs to be feasible. So is it doable within a certain time frame? Do you have access to the data you need or the right kind of respondents? It really depends on your situation. But for this research question, it will fit more into a time frame of a longer project, so it wouldn't be feasible for an assignment you have to hand in by the end of the month. Be specific. All the terms you use in the research question should have clear meanings. Notice how I don't use often, but daily? And instead of using adolescents, I use a specific age group. The research question should also be complex enough. If the research question can be answered with yes or no, or with easily found facts, then it's not complex enough. Last but not least, make sure your problem is relevant to your field of study or society. Well, social media is pretty much all we use now, so that's definitely relevant to society. It also targets a currently unanswered question and contribute knowledge that future research can build on. Now keep in mind, in a research paper or essay, you usually only write one research question. For a bigger project, you can also develop multiple research questions around the same problem. For example, I can also ask, does the infinite scroll function contribute to the effect on attention span? Follow the steps and checklist and end up with the research question as a solid foundation for your research. Make sure you also check out our articles on writing the literature review and the...
We'll stop here and quickly go over what we learned. So, research questions need to be specific, they need to be focused, right? We can't have something that's general. As she mentioned, she picked a specific age group from 15, or I believe 16 to 20 years old. It should also be testable with available resources, right? We don't want something that's, say, we're doing a study of the entire population, and I'll get into more about the types of research questions that shouldn't be allowed. But you don't want, but you can't review every single person, right, in the entire world. That's not going to be feasible. Is there any lag right now? Okay. Is everyone able to hear me, see the video just fine? Or see the screen? Okay, cool. Again, if there's major issues, we'll just release the slides. So yeah, but anyways, okay, cool. So we need it to be testable with available resources. We can't have a research project that maybe costs like $10,000 in order to do, right? We probably won't be able to get the funding. It's probably not going to be worth it. So yeah. Safety and ethicality is going to be a huge aspect. If you're doing anything involving humans, you're going to need an IR approval. It's basically an institutional review board that makes sure your project aligns with ethical standards. But anything like involving living things or anything that can be traced back to a living thing, you're going to need an approval for it. If you're doing prompts with anonymous data, for example, maybe like photos of patient kidneys, but they don't have listed information about their age, their contact, etc., then you don't need any approval for that. Completable within the time frame. So this is going to be a big one, at least for us. We have 5 months roughly until the competition date. So I know that seems like a lot, but given like how long these projects typically take, I can assure you this time will pass by in a blink of an eye, or it'll be like a month with barely any progress. So be consistent when you're making a project, and don't overestimate your ability to like do a project. Don't aim too big. If this is your first year, I would honestly aim for like a smaller project, because the research judges or the judges at ISEF, they are looking for that's like, wow, impressive. This man or this person is curing cancer, right? But at the same time, they also, and more importantly, they look at projects that have strong methodology, are very rooted in scientific process, right? Obviously, you are still high schoolers. They're not expecting groundbreaking research, and even without doing research that's like curing cancer, you're still going to go to a very high level in ISEF competitions. So focus more on how you do the study rather than what the study is about. Okay, novelty, again, like I said before, it should be your second focus as you've been doing this a while. Novelty, you can worry about that thing, worry about it later on as you go through the process. Number one thing though, it should be feasible. Again, answer all the previous bullet points need to be testable, ethical, etc. One more note to add on to safety and ethicality. If you're doing something that requires an IRB approval, you're typically going to need to wait 1 to 2 months. And I personally have not gone through the IRB process at Tompkins High School, but do have an IRB board that you can contact if you do have a project that requires humans. Finally, clearly define variables you can measure. We want the research to be measurable. We want it to be quantitative, not qualitative, right? This is an experimental study. In the video, she mentioned other types like descriptive studies, correlative studies. This is not what ISEF is. It's purely experimental. You're modifying one variable, and yeah, you're seeing the impact, right? So this means anything like involving surveys. I said that before, but surveys are like a no-go. Those are like very weak forms of research. They're very hard to prove, very hard to like associate with a certain outcome. So I would refrain from doing anything survey, and then try and do something that's as close to an experiment as possible. Okay, cool. And let's take a brief pause here. Does anyone have any questions about research topics or how to form a question? Okay, so are we all clear? Okay, then we can move on. All right, so let's look at a few examples. So example number one, right? How does music affect the brain? What's some flaws with this research topic? If I was to go to ISEF tomorrow and then I was to present the paper on this topic, I would like, what are some flaws with this? Not specific enough is a good one, right? I mean, so what are some ways we can improve this? What can we change? Too broad, right? Maybe one way we could improve this is by saying, how does music affect the temporal lobe? That's more specific. We can go even further than that, maybe look at specific nerves, make a measure music, improving performance in a task, right? So maybe classical music, we can do a trial with classical music, compare it to maybe rock music, see how that affects the temporal lobe. That's already mild better. And not in the research question, but this would probably be specified in the methodology. You wouldn't want an age group because a 6-year-old listening to music is not going to respond to it the same way a 20-year-old will, or maybe a 10-year-old will. There's different developmental stages. Elaborate more on what I'm testing. Exactly, right? Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, temporal lobe, how are you going to measure this? Well, you could monitor using ECG, or yeah, you can monitor using an ECG scan. Just look at the brain waves. That's one way to do it. Okay, cool. So let's move on. What's an issue with this research topic? What is the effect of different rocket fuels and spacecraft performance in deep space missions? This one looks a lot more, or comparatively, it looks more specific. Hard to test, right? Feasibility, that's going to be a big issue with this one. Right? How are we going to test different rocket fuels? I mean, you can look, I mean, getting many of these materials too would probably be very costly. Maybe it might even be illegal to obtain some of these materials, right? You're not going to be able to do your hypothesis. Experimentally though, right? What is the effect of different rocket fuels and space performance? This is a very strong experiment in terms of methods, right? You're just going to take different rocket fuels and then control, like you're going to change the type of rocket fuel and then see its effect on spacecraft performance. Space pollution, sure. It's not necessarily something that's going to be penalized or you would need an approval for, but ethicality, yeah, you might consider that. And ISEF judges might actually question you on that, your methods. How did you do this study ethically? Did you mess anything up or maybe damage the environment? Not enough material to learn? Sure, yeah. You can get a mentorship, but this might also be out of your scope, right, as a high school student. All right, and our last question. Does a new cancer treatment I developed work better than chemotherapy? All right, so what's some flaws with this one? A way to test it, yeah. I mean, biggest concern I'm looking at this right now would be IRB approval. Because what are you going to do? You're going to grab cancer patients and then see if they're willing to test a new experiment while their life is on the line? Probably not, right? Especially as a high school researcher, you're probably not going to have access. Even if you do, it's probably not going to get accepted. And again, same issues as the previous one, right? What do you mean work better? Like, you can narrow this down. Like, there's a bunch of ways to narrow this down. And this could potentially develop into a very good research question, given more specified planning. So one way this could be improved, right? We could define better as maybe more improved longitudinal outcomes. Maybe they live longer. Maybe they have less hair loss, or maybe they have less organ damage, looking at a specific organ. That could be another way to be more specific, right? And this research question, it has a lot of different avenues you can go in, right? A lot of different ways you can improve it. Okay, I guess let's just do one more. We can review Harry's. So how often do teenagers 13 to 18 reference 6, 7 in social media platforms? Okay. I walked into that, but okay. But yeah. So I guess we'll just go ahead and look at that one. So what's some flaws with that research question? Some things I can look into, right, is firstly, how are you going to get access to 13 to 18-year-olds? Those are minors. You're probably not going to be able to get in contact with them or get approval for IRB. Second, there's snowball. There's a thing called snowball survey. I believe snowballing. It's when you only talk to the people who are closest to you, only do experiments who you have easy access to. Generally, this is not going to be as strong. And to do a true random study, you're going to have to then it'll be more expensive and it might probably be a survey. So yeah. And again, social media platforms, be more specific. What social media platform are you looking into? Maybe TikTok? And then even from that, cost concerns, right? Think about it. How are we going to afford the cost of web scraping? Many of these different companies use APIs. If you look at Reddit, for example, they have costs for you to actually scrape the platform, use that bot. So this could go into thousands of dollars, right? That's one concern. On top of that, right, concerns over like personal information. Did you get permission from the users to scrape their data? Is that even legal, right? You also need to factor that in. How'd you get permission from the people who are doing surveys? And finally, I mean, novelty as well and impact, right? So what? If people reference this number a lot in online media platforms, so what does that mean? How does that contribute to a body of research? How does that actually improve humanity? It doesn't really have any impact. Cool. All right. So hopefully through this process, you got a better idea of what different ideas in research actually look like. Okay, cool. This was supposed to be the last slide, but yeah. If you go back to Canvas, the video we just watched was from the project proposal number 1, creating a research question. Over the next week, I want everyone here, if you're able to submit the assignments, project proposal 1, general meeting 1, the club membership form, and the registration confirmation. These 2 are required for you to continue on from continue through the course. These 2, we're going to take what you write over this week. Next week, we're going to have a discussion post where you can evaluate each other's ideas based on the merits we've talked about today. Okay, cool. So, all right, now Q&A. Is there any, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and ask them about any part of the lecture today. Oh, yes. So, good question. We don't expect you by this week to have your final question. We understand, like, I mean, this takes time. For me, my research question took me like 2 months in order to come up with. So this is going to be something iterative, but you need to start writing research questions, being able to identify flaws with the research question, right? Because let's say you find this really good idea. You run into a feasibility concern 15 days later. What are you going to do? You have to pivot completely. But now you have that knowledge, right? There's this specific issue with this type of research. In the future, you're not going to fall into that trap as easily. Okay, yeah, and attendance phrase. Let's see. Okay, unsure where I put that. Let's see here, I believe. This quiz is just to like make sure you've actually watched the lecture. So let's see what the attendance phrase is. Okay, cool. The attendance phrase is first meeting, Pascal case, and then exclamation mark. Good idea though. We might have some quizzes in the future. Just first letter, capital F, capital M. I'll copy it in the chat. Cool. And once you enter that, if you want to leave, meeting's over. If you have questions, I'll be here until everyone's answered. So, yeah. Good question. So there's that's yeah. In our final presentation, how much do we need to have? The image you showed had 3 trifolds stacked on top of each other. Do you really need that much? No. So if we go on to ISEF, Western board specifications, there's more specific information. I can post this onto the resources as well. ISEF projects need to be within a maximum size of 30 inches depth, 48 inches width, and 108 inches in height. So my poster, I believe I did it. It's about like as big as my upper torso. There's different sizes you can use. There's only a maximum size. I would say generally, you don't want to go past like too small of a font, and you won't get penalized if your poster board is too small. So there's not a minimum size. There's a maximum, basically. And on top of just the poster, it's not just that. There's also like research journals, as I mentioned, like keeping track of what you wrote every day, log notebook, maybe like a little prototype. If you've created a model, you can demonstrate, show the judges what you actually created, how you tested it. The max size is when it's extended as much as possible. Or extended as much as possible as in, it's a good question. Yeah, I'm going to go with, it's probably when it's like extended as much as possible. If you're using a trifold, maybe they'll give you a little bit of leniency. There's a little bit of a tolerance, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. As in, it's huge. It's going to be like probably almost 1.5 times bigger than me. So, I mean, it's a good problem to have. Oh, project. I don't believe there's a limit on the project size. Just make sure it's not so large as in it doesn't fit on your table. It's just for our local competition, it's just going to be like those lifetime tables with like what, for like pizza parties or something like that. Yeah, just those foldable tables. Okay, cool. All right, again, make sure you fill out the form, get all the assignments completed, especially the membership form and the registration form, because if you don't, you cannot participate in the club. Okay. Is there any other questions? I think that's it. If anyone else has any more questions, DM me, so or any other officer, and we can answer you through DMs, or maybe you can tell us just like next time. But yeah, that's all for this meeting. Thank you all for coming. Make sure if you haven't already, do the attendance form. And see you next week. Oh, one more thing. We are moving our meeting times from 3:30 to 4 p.m. I think that'll just work better for everybody. So yeah, just remember that we're not going to be having the meeting at the same time. All right, cool. Well, that is everyone. Okay, thank you all for coming. Goodbye.